That night on duty, she didn't just save lives, she discovered a conspiracy that would shake the entire medical world to its core. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been working the night shift at Metropolitan General Hospital for 12 years. The fluorescent lights hummed above her as she reviewed patient charts, thinking this would be just another routine evening in the ER. But what she didn't know was that in exactly 17 minutes, a patient would arrive who would change everything she believed about medicine, ethics, and the very hospital she'd devoted her career to. The automatic doors slid open with their familiar whoosh. Paramedics rushed in with a young woman on a stretcher, her face pale and breathing labored. 23-year-old female, found unconscious at home. Roommate called 911. Vitals are. Elena's trained eyes immediately assessed the patient as they moved toward Trauma Bay 3. Something felt wrong beyond the obvious medical emergency. The woman's symptoms didn't align with any standard diagnosis Elena had seen in her decade-plus of emergency medicine. But what would truly shock her was what she'd find in the patient's blood work just 30 minutes later. What happened next would haunt her forever. The unusual patient, what's her name? Elena asked as they transferred the patient to the hospital bed. Jessica Martinez, age 23, works as a data analyst downtown. The paramedic replied, handing over the paperwork. Elena began her examination. The patient's pupils were dilated, but not from any drug she could immediately identify. Her heart rate was elevated, but the rhythm was strange, almost artificial. As a doctor who had seen everything from overdoses to rare diseases, Elena prided herself on quick diagnosis. But this case was different. Run a full toxicology panel, she instructed Nurse Rebecca, one of her most trusted colleagues. And I want a complete blood count, liver function, everything. But it wasn't the medical mystery that truly concerned Elena. It was the man in the expensive suit who had been sitting in the waiting room when the paramedics arrived. He claimed to be Jessica's family friend, but Elena's instincts, honed by years of dealing with domestic violence cases and suspicious circumstances, told her something was off. Dr. Rodriguez. Rebecca returned with a concerned expression. The blood work. You need to see this. Elena took the tablet, displaying the results. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the numbers. This wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. Then her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions about the patient. For your own safety. This is where everything changed. Elena stared at her phone screen, then back at Jessica's blood work. The results showed traces of a compound she'd never seen before, something that didn't exist in any medical database she could access. But more disturbing was how quickly someone had known she was investigating. Rebecca, has anyone else seen these results? Just you and me. Why? Is something wrong? Elena looked around the busy ER. The man in the suit was no longer in the waiting room. Lock down access to this patient's file. Only you and me. Dr. Rodriguez. That's against hospital policy. Trust me on this. Elena had always prided herself on following protocols, respecting the system that had made her one of the youngest ER directors in the hospital's history. But her medical oath was clear. First, do no harm. And every instinct she had was screaming that Jessica Martinez was in danger. She decided to run additional tests. Unofficial ones that wouldn't appear in the main hospital system. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. As Elena worked through the night, Jessica's condition stabilized but remained mysterious. The young woman would occasionally mumble incoherently, mentioning numbers and codes that made no sense. Elena found herself writing down these seemingly random phrases, though she couldn't explain why. At 3:47 a.m., Dr. Harrison Webb, the hospital's chief of medicine, appeared at Elena's station. It was unusual for him to be at the hospital this late, especially on a Tuesday night. Dr. Rodriguez, I understand you have an interesting patient. Elena felt her stomach drop. Sir, Jessica Martinez. I've been asked to personally oversee her care. Asked by whom? Dr. Webb's expression remained neutral, but Elena noticed the slight tension in his jaw. Hospital administration. High-profile case, you understand. Elena didn't understand at all. Jessica Martinez was a data analyst, not a celebrity or politician. Why would administration care about one unconscious patient? I can handle the case, Dr. Webb. Her condition is stabilizing. I'm sure you can, Elena, but I'll be taking over from here. Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail. As Dr. Webb walked toward Jessica's room, Elena noticed something that made her blood run cold. In his breast pocket was a phone with the same distinctive case she'd seen on the man in the expensive suit earlier. Elena couldn't sleep when her shift ended at 6 a.m. Instead of going home to her small apartment, she drove to a 24-hour diner and opened her laptop. Jessica's mumbled words kept echoing in her mind. Project Nightingale, Database 77 Alpha, they're changing the protocols. As a doctor, Elena had access to medical research databases that the general public couldn't reach. She started searching for any reference to Project Nightingale. What she found made her hands shake as she held her coffee cup. 3 months ago, a research facility in Nevada had reported a breakthrough in enhanced pharmaceutical delivery systems. The lead researcher was Dr. Harrison Webb. Elena stared at her screen. Her boss, the man she'd worked under for 5 years, was involved in experimental research that apparently wasn't as theoretical as she'd thought. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed Metropolitan General. "Alina, thank God, you answered." It was Rebecca, and she sounded panicked. "What's wrong? It's Jessica Martinez. She's gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "Discharged. Dr. Webb signed her out 2 hours ago. Said she'd made a full recovery." Alina knew that was impossible. Jessica had been unconscious with unknown toxins in her system just hours before. No ethical doctor would discharge a patient in that condition. But the truly shocking thing was what Rebecca said next. "Alina, I checked the system. According to the hospital records, Jessica Martinez was never here. Her entire file has been deleted." Alina's mind raced as she drove back to the hospital. A patient doesn't just disappear, especially not from a major medical center with dozens of staff members who had seen her. But when she accessed the hospital's computer system, Rebecca was right. There was no trace of Jessica Martinez ever being admitted. She found Rebecca in the break room, looking shaken. "This is impossible," Alina said. "I treated her. You drew her blood. The paramedics brought her in." "I know what we saw," Rebecca whispered, "but look at this." She handed Alina a tablet showing the night's admission logs. Alina's name appeared on several cases, but there was no record of Jessica Martinez. More disturbing, Alina's logged hours showed gaps, as if the time she'd spent treating Jessica had been erased from existence. "Rebecca, did you keep any of the blood samples?" "I tried to, but when I went to the lab this morning, they said they had no samples from that patient. The lab tech I spoke to last night. He's calling in sick today." Alina felt like she was living in a nightmare. But her medical training had taught her to think systematically, even in crisis situations. "We need evidence that she was here. How everything's been erased." Alina thought about the security cameras. The hospital keeps surveillance footage for 30 days. Even if they deleted the medical records, they can't have erased every camera in the building. But just as they were planning to check the security office, Dr. Webb appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Rodriguez, Nurse Rebecca, I need to speak with both of you." Now this is where everything gets dangerous. Dr. Webb led them to his office and closed the door. Alina noticed that the blinds were already drawn, unusual for a man who typically kept his office bright and welcoming. "I understand you've been asking questions about a patient who was never here," he began. Alina looked him straight in the eye. "Jessica Martinez was admitted at 11:23 p.m. I treated her personally." "Dr. Rodriguez, you worked a difficult shift last night. Sometimes, under stress, medical professionals can experience false memories, even hallucinations. Are you suggesting I'm having a psychotic break?" "I'm suggesting you take a week off, paid leave, get some rest." Rebecca started to speak, but Dr. Webb cut her off. "You too, Nurse Rebecca. Same recommendation." Alina realized what was happening. They weren't being offered vacation time, they were being silenced. "And if we refuse?" Dr. Webb's expression hardened. "Alina, you're a brilliant doctor. You have a promising career ahead of you. Don't throw it away, chasing fantasies." The threat was subtle but clear. Alina thought about her student loans, her mother's medical bills, the life she'd built through 12 years of dedication to medicine. But she also thought about her oath as a doctor and what might happen to other patients if she stayed quiet. "I need to think about it," she said. "Take the night." But Alina, Dr. Webb's voice followed her to the door. "Some things are bigger than individual conscience. Sometimes we have to trust the system." Alina left the office knowing that her life, as she knew it, was over. The only question now was whether she'd fight back or disappear, like Jessica Martinez. But what she discovered next would prove that some fights are worth everything. Alina couldn't go home. Instead, she drove to the public library downtown, knowing that whatever she researched there wouldn't be traced back to the hospital's network. Using a public computer, she dove deeper into Project Nightingale. What she found was worse than she'd imagined. But Project Nightingale wasn't just experimental pharmaceutical research, it was human testing of mind control drugs. Funded by a consortium of pharmaceutical companies and overseen by select medical professionals in major hospitals across the country. The goal was to create compounds that could make people more compliant, more suggestible. The test subjects weren't volunteers. They were patients who fit specific profiles: young, few family connections, jobs that required access to sensitive data or systems. Alina's hands shook as she read testimonials from other medical professionals who had discovered the program. Most had been silenced through threats to their careers, but a few had fought back, and their stories were terrifying. Dr. Sarah Chen from San Francisco had tried to expose similar activities at her hospital. She'd been found dead in her apartment, ruled a suicide despite having no history of mental illness. Dr. Marcus Thompson from Chicago had gone to the FBI. His medical license had been revoked for psychiatric instability and delusions. Alina was beginning to understand the scope of what she was facing when her phone buzzed. It was a text from the same unknown number as before. "Go home, Dr. Rodriguez. Forget what you think you saw. Last warning." But instead of fear, Alina felt something else rising in her chest: anger. She was a doctor. She had sworn to protect patients, to do no harm. Every fiber of her being rebelled against the idea of walking away. You won't believe what she did next. Alina drove home, but not to pack or hide. She went to retrieve something she'd hoped never to use. A small digital recorder her journalism professor had given her in college, before she'd decided to pursue medicine instead of investigative reporting. If she was going to fight this, she needed evidence, and she knew exactly where to get it. At 2 a.m., Alina used her hospital keycard to enter Metropolitan General through the staff entrance. The night shift was minimal, and she knew the building's layout by heart. Her destination was Dr. Webb's office. The lock was electronic, but Alina knew the override codes, a security measure in case of medical emergencies. As head of the ER, she had access to most areas of the hospital. Dr. Webb's computer was password protected, but Alina had noticed him typing his login hundreds of times over the years. Her photographic memory, essential for medical diagnosis, served her well now. What she found on his computer made her stomach turn. Files labeled Nightingale test subjects contained dozens of names, photos, and detailed psychological profiles. Jessica Martinez was there, along with information about her job at a data analysis firm that handled government contracts. But Jessica wasn't the only one. Alina recognized other names, patients she'd treated over the past year who had presented with unusual symptoms and then mysteriously improved and disappeared from the system. She was copying files to her recorder when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Alina's heart pounded as she quickly closed the computer and hid behind the desk. The footsteps passed by, but she knew her time was limited. As she prepared to leave, she found one more file that stopped her cold. Elena Rodriguez. Recruitment potential. The file contained her complete psychological profile, her financial situation, her mother's medical expenses, and a detailed plan for either recruiting her into the program or eliminating her as a threat. Alina realized she'd been watched for months. Here comes the moment that changed everything. The Escapilina had barely made it back to the hallway when the lights suddenly came on. Dr. Webb stood at the end of the corridor, no longer bothering to maintain his friendly facade. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, Alina. She clutched a small recorder in her pocket. You're experimenting on patients. Innocent people. We're advancing medical science. The applications for treating severe mental illness, PTSD, addiction, the potential is limitless. By drugging people without consent, by turning patients into test subjects, Dr. Webb took a step closer. Alina, you're thinking small. We're talking about revolutionary treatments that could help millions of people. And if some unwilling test subjects die in the process, every medical breakthrough requires sacrifice. You know this. Alina backed toward the exit, but Dr. Webb pressed a button on his phone. She heard the distinct sound of electronic locks engaging throughout the building. I can't let you leave with what you know. Alina ran. The hospital at night was a maze of locked doors and secured sections, but Alina's 12 years of working every shift gave her advantages Dr. Webb didn't have. She knew which stairwells stayed unlocked for emergency access, which windows could be opened from the inside. As she raced through the corridors, she could hear security guards being mobilized over the intercom system. But Alina also heard something else, her pager beeping with an emergency code. Even in her desperate situation, her medical instincts kicked in. She couldn't ignore a potential medical emergency. The code was coming from the ER, a trauma alert. Alina had to make an impossible choice: escape with the evidence she'd found, or return to help save a life. She chose medicine, but when she arrived at the ER, she discovered it was a trap. The trauma bay was empty except for Dr. Webb and two men in suits Alina didn't recognize. Her heart sank as she realized she'd walked directly into their hands. Dr. Rodriguez, one of the men said, I'm Agent Morrison, CDC. We need to discuss your recent concerns about hospital protocols. Alina almost laughed at the absurdity. CDC, this is about illegal human experimentation, not disease control. Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Webb's voice was almost gentle now. You're experiencing a severe stress reaction. The CDC has protocols for medical professionals who develop paranoid delusions about their workplace. Alina realized they were going to claim she was mentally unstable, the same tactic they'd used against other doctors who had tried to expose the program. Agent Morrison continued, we're prepared to get you the help you need. A short stay at a specialized facility, proper medication, and you'll be back to your normal life in no time. You mean drugged into compliance like your other test subjects? Dr. Rodriguez, no one is trying to harm you. We're trying to help. Alina's hand moved to the recorder in her pocket. She had evidence of the conversation, but she needed to get it to someone who could act on it. What about Jessica Martinez? There is no Jessica Martinez, Dr. Webb said firmly. You treated no such patient. Then explain this. Alina pulled out her phone and played a recording she'd made hours earlier. Jessica's voice mumbling about Project Nightingale. She'd been recording potential evidence all along. Dr. Webb's expression changed. Where did you get that? Doctor, not an idiot. I documented everything. The two fake agents moved closer, but Elena had one more card to play. I've already uploaded copies of everything to cloud storage with instructions for automatic release. If I don't check in every 12 hours, you can drug me, discredit me, or worse, but the evidence will still come out. It was a bluff, but a convincing one. Dr. Webb studied her face for a long moment. Everyone thought the game was over, but the real shock was ... the truth about Jessica, Dr. Rodriguez. Dr. Webb said slowly, "Sit down. It's time you learned the whole truth." Elena remained standing, suspicious. Jessica Martinez is alive and safe. She's at a specialized facility where she's recovering from her exposure to an experimental compound. Exposure? You mean you poisoned her? She was exposed accidentally. Jessica works for a data analysis company that was investigating irregularities in pharmaceutical research funding. She got too close to discovering Project Nightingale, and someone decided to silence her permanently. Elena's mind reeled. Someone tried to murder her with a compound designed to cause gradual organ failure over several weeks, making it look like natural causes. What you saw was the early stages of poisoning. Then why the cover-up? Why erase her records? Dr. Webb looked genuinely pained. Because I've been working with the FBI for 6 months to expose the real perpetrators. The men who tried to kill Jessica are part of a criminal organization that's infiltrated several major hospitals. Elena stared at him. You're saying you're the good guy? I'm saying the situation is more complex than you realized. Jessica is alive because you saved her. But her disappearance from the records was necessary to protect her while we build our case against the real criminals. Agent Morrison stepped forward, and this time Elena noticed the genuine FBI badge. Dr. Rodriguez, your quick thinking and medical expertise saved Jessica's life, but we need your help to save others. Elena's world was spinning again, but in a different direction. What kind of help? We need a doctor inside the system, someone who can identify other potential victims and help us gather evidence. Elena looked between Dr. Webb and Agent Morrison. How do I know you're telling the truth? Dr. Webb handed her his phone. On the screen was a video call with Jessica Martinez, alive and conscious, sitting in what appeared to be a safe house. Dr. Rodriguez, Jessica's voice was weak but clear. Thank you for saving my life. Elena sat down heavily in the nearest chair as the full scope of the situation became clear. The men who tried to kill Jessica are part of an organization that's been using hospitals as cover for assassination attempts. Agent Morrison explained. They target people who get too close to discovering illegal activities, government corruption, corporate fraud, organized crime. They make it look like medical complications, Dr. Webb added. A drug interaction here, a surgical mistake there. Very difficult to trace unless you know what to look for. And you want me to help catch them. You've already proven you have the instincts for it, Agent Morrison said. You identified that Jessica's condition wasn't natural. You preserved evidence. You refused to be intimidated. Elena thought about her medical oath, about all the patients she'd treated over the years. How many had she lost to what she'd assumed were natural complications? What would I have to do? Continue working as normal, but watch for patients. With unusual presentations, document everything. We'll provide you with secure communication methods. And if they figure out what I'm doing, Dr. Webb and Agent Morrison exchanged glances. We won't lie to you, Elena. It's dangerous. But we believe you're the kind of person who became a doctor to save lives, not just treat symptoms. Elena stood up and walked to the window, overlooking the city. Somewhere out there were people whose lives depended on medical professionals like her. But also somewhere out there were people who would kill to keep their secrets safe. She thought about Jessica Martinez, about the other names in those files, about the oaths she'd taken to do no harm. When she turned around, her decision was made. What do you need me to do? But just as Agent Morrison started to speak, Elena's pager went off with a real emergency code. Dr. Rodriguez. The voice came over the intercom. We need you, in trauma. Bay 1 immediately. Multiple casualties coming in. Elena looked at Dr. Webb. Duty calls, always. Dr. Rodriguez. But now, you'll be serving more than just your patients. As Elena headed toward the trauma bay, she realized her life had taken a turn she could never have imagined. She was still Dr. Elena Rodriguez, emergency medicine physician, but now she was also something else, a guardian standing between innocent people and those who would hurt them. The automatic doors slid open as the first ambulance arrived. Elena stepped forward to meet whatever challenge awaited, knowing that from this moment on, every patient could be more than just a medical case. They could be someone whose life depended on her ability to see what others missed. 3 months later, Elena was reviewing patient charts when her secure phone buzzed. Agent Morrison's message was brief. Package delivered. Subject, safe. Thank you. It had taken weeks of careful observation, but Elena had identified another victim of the assassination ring, a journalist, who had been slowly poisoned with compounds designed to mimic liver disease. This time, they'd caught it in time. Elena looked around the ER, bustling with its usual controlled chaos. To everyone else, she was the same dedicated doctor she'd always been. But she carried a secret now. The knowledge that medicine could be used as a weapon, and the responsibility to ensure it remained a force for healing. Her phone rang, the regular hospital line. Dr. Rodriguez, we have an unusual case coming. In 28-year-old male, found unconscious, unknown cause. Alina grabbed her stethoscope and headed toward the trauma bay. What are his symptoms? But even as she asked the question, she was already thinking beyond the obvious medical concerns. In a world where healers could become killers, every patient deserved a doctor who would ask the hard questions. Alina Rodriguez had become more than a physician. She had become a guardian of the sacred trust between doctor and patient, and she would never stop fighting for that trust. Dr. Alina Rodriguez discovered that sometimes saving lives means fighting for more than just medical miracles. In a world where trust can be weaponized, heroes are found among those who refuse to look away.